Today we're in the Willow Spring Picnic Area of Red Rock Canyon. Here's White Rock Mountain. There's the Madre Ridgeline. Here's the northern end of the Rainbow Mountain Range. And what we're going to do is head up to the upper end of the Willow Spring Picnic Area, get onto Rocky Gap Road, take Rocky Gap Road about halfway to the summit of that road. There's a place called Switchback Spring. At Switchback Spring, we're going to find a way to get to the summit of the Wilson Ridgeline. If we can do that, we can make two loops. One loop would be what I'll call South Switchback Spring Loop. The other would be North Switchback Spring Loop. By the way, both these loops depend upon getting to the summit of the ridgeline. You can see there are a lot of cliffs up there, a lot of vertical areas. Why is this adventure so important? It's because it covers 2 or 3 major ridge lines, and the ridge lines in this area are just spectacular. You get up to the ridge line. For example, here's the La Madre ridge line. And when you're on this ridge line, you're looking down on Red Rock Canyon in this direction. That's pretty amazing. Here we're between the Rainbow Mountains and White Rock Mountain. But when you're up on that ridge line, you're looking down on all of Red Rock Canyon. It's just spectacular. And then on the other side, you're looking down on Kyle Canyon. And then you look to the west and you'll be looking at the Mount Charleston Wilderness. It's just tremendous. And you look to the northeast and you're looking at the Sheep Range, Desert National Wildlife Refuge, the largest wildlife refuge in the lower 48 states. So you're looking at vast wilderness areas. And this is the La Madre Ridgeline. It will eventually meet the Wilson Ridgeline. And when you're on the Wilson Ridgeline, you're looking down on Level Canyon, you're looking up to the summit of the Wilson Ridgeline in the Mount Charleston Wilderness, Harris Mountain. And you're looking at Griffith Peak, you're seeing Sexton Ridge across Level Canyon. So, and then the other direction, you're looking at the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline. We are surrounded by spectacular ridgelines. And when you reach the summit of these ridgelines, everything becomes visible. All the ridgelines, a majority of the wilderness areas, the great wilderness areas in southern Nevada, there's so much to see. Right here, we're looking at the entrance to the Rainbow Mountains Wilderness. And then over on this side, beginning of the La Madre Springs Trail, we're looking at the entrance to the La Madre Mountains Wilderness. And then again, down in this direction, Red Rock Canyon, all these spectacular wilderness areas. And they're all accessed from this point. And when you get up on the ridge lines, you can see them all. So I really want to get up on the Wilson Ridgeline. We'll take a look at it Once we take a left here, we pass the edge of the La Madre Ridgeline where it meets the Wilson Ridgeline. And right around that area, we're going to ascend the Wilson Ridgeline if we can find a way through the vertical areas. And yeah, just look at this. A lot of vertical areas, but as you look at it closely, you can see some points, perhaps, where you might be able to weave around through the cliffs and get to the summit. I've done it from the top of La Madre Springs, but it does require a combination of navigational skill and also just rock scrambling. I don't do anything above class 3, which is you're using your hands and your feet both to pull yourself over rocky areas. I don't do class 4, which you're starting to need the use of ropes and technical climbing gear. Okay, anyway, onward. Let's continue up Rocky Gap Road. Here, a little further up Rocky Gap Road, is another look at these amazing ridge lines. And there you see the La Madre ridge line. You're looking toward La Madre Mountain, El Padre Mountain, El Bastardo. 8,000 feet approximately. And here's the ridge line we just looked at a moment ago, La Madre ridge line, but now we can see more of it. And over in this area is where the La Madre Ridgeline meets the Wilson Ridgeline. And as I mentioned, the northern tip of the Rainbow Mountains, there's a ridgeline, the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline, that runs parallel and above the Rainbow Mountains all the way over to Highway 160 and Potosi Mountain on the south end. So great ridge lines. And I hope we can get to the summit of one of these ridge lines and then everything becomes visible. It's like you can see the whole world. We can see a lot more now. There you're looking at the La Madre ridge line. We are a couple miles up Rocky Gap Road. And you're looking at El Padre Mountain on the right, I believe, and El Bastardo on the left. I'm not 100% sure from this angle. And then the La Madre Ridge line connects with the Wilson Ridge line right about this point behind this pinnacle. Our summit area would be in this saddle if we can get up there. And the way we're going to try is we're going to cross to the other side of the base of this ridge in the foreground, circle around, summit the ridge line, and then continue upward to somewhere right around this point where we're going to weave through what we hope is an opening in the cliffs and achieve the upper ridge line. If we can do that, and that's on the Wilson Ridge at that point, if we can do that, then we've got the whole world opened beneath us. A lot of major wilderness areas. And then looking up Rocky Gap Road, got a little further to go. And there you're looking at the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline, and the very northern tip of the Rainbow Mountains. And then just to complete the 360-degree circuit here, there's White Rock Mountain where we started. On the, if you look at the slope going down the right side of the mountain, we started at the base of that slope at Willow Spring and then back to the Madre Ridgeline. We're about 2 1/3 miles into this adventure, and at the base of our ascent ridge, it looks like there might be a little pathway right here at the base. And what you see above is the ascent ridge. And eventually when we get higher, we'll be able to look at our ascent point to the upper ridge line. It's either to the right of that pinnacle on the right or in between the two pinnacles. This is the Switchback Springs area right here. So yeah, we're ascending this ridge line and then ascending the upper ridge line at the pinnacles above. Over here, you're looking at Tio Grande. I call it the mini Matterhorn pinnacles. There is Red Rock Summit. It's also called Pepper. I've seen both those names. And then a little further along, there's another outcrop. Yeah, you can see it. Just the tip of that outcrop. Right up here. This outcrop, I call it the knife's edge pinnacle, but it is just above the upper end of Rocky Gap Road here. And it's where the trail to Bridge Mountain begins. First high point on this ascent ridge line, and views are already beginning to open up dramatically. There is Rocky Gap Road below. Across the way, you can see the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline and the northern tip of the Rainbow Mountains. White Rock Mountain. The La Madre Mountains Ridgeline. And here's where the La Madre Ridgeline connects with the Wilson Ridgeline. Now everything to the left of that high point is on the Wilson Ridgeline. Here is hopefully our summit route. Our next high point is this high point on the ascent ridgeline. We'll see a lot more from there. And then you can see the Wilson Ridgeline continuing on. Red Rock Summit. And the very edge above the Bridge Mountain Trailhead and the summit of Rocky Gap Road, what I call Knife's Edge Pinnacle. And then here we are back at Rocky Gap Road. Here we are on the approach ridge way beyond that last high point, which you can't even see below. So you get an idea. Let's look down and around. You can see Rocky Gap Road. Now, way below. Rainbow Mountain's upper Crest Ridgeline. And now North Sandstone Peak coming into view. There it is. And actually the Ridgeline Trail that you'd want to take to get up to North Sandstone would be right down at this point on Rocky Gap Road. And I'll trace the ridgeline that'll take you up there. And that's called the North Peak Trail. There's actually a trail that'll take you all the way up from Rocky Gap Road. Follows this ridgeline. Makes a crescent, ends up at North Sandstone Peak. And then you trace the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline over to North Limestone Peak, right over here. Beautiful vantage point, 360-degree view from all these peaks, but it's kind of like you're at on the turret of a medieval castle. It is beautiful up there. And then looking around down to the Willow Spring area down here. Below the upper end, the north end of the Rainbow Mountains and White Rock Mountain. And then over in this direction, you can see the trail that goes around White Rock Mountain. And if you take a left, right about this point, you end up on the trail toward La Madre Springs. There's the La Madre Ridgeline. Here's where the La Madre Ridgeline meets the Wilson Ridgeline. And here we're looking at the Wilson Ridgeline. The question, can I get up there? Still not a sure thing. Red Rock Summit. And then back to Rocky Gap Road and the Rainbow Mountains Upper Crest Ridgeline. Now, from this standpoint, I just want to describe the two loops that I would like to create. One is the Switchback Spring South Loop, both summit by the route I've been taking. And if I can find my way up to the ridgeline above, then the south loop would continue on that ridgeline past Red Rock Summit and descend to Rocky Gap Road beyond its high point, and then circle around and head down Rocky Gap Road and back to Willow Spring. That's the south loop. Switchback Spring South Loop. Now, Switchback Spring North Loop would ascend this same ridgeline Only when you reach the Wilson Ridge, instead of turning left, you would turn right. You'd circle around behind this imposing high point, which is actually the junction between the Wilson Ridge and the Madre Ridgeline. You take the Madre Ridgeline to a point above Madre Spring, head down Madre Spring, meet the trail somewhere down in this area between the Madre Ridgeline and White Rock Mountain, then circle around and back to Willow Spring. So that's the Switchback Spring north and south loop. I'm not sure if it's possible, but I do know that if I can get from here to the summit of the Wilson Ridgeline, that both of those loops are possible. The whole thing depends on getting around this next stretch. So let's continue up this ridgeline and just see how far we can get. Okay, we are up at a high point on this approach ridgeline, and you can see the ridgeline continuing to extend. But it looks like in order to take the route that I want to take, it would involve circling around. So I'll trace it, continuing on the ridgeline up to this point, and then circling around and way down to this point. I'll make it larger. There you go. So down to this point, and then up, and then winding around, if it's possible, up here, kind of a zigzag, and then behind this cliffy area, it looks like there could be an approach that would take you up to that spot there. So let's get the big picture on all that. So down that gully to where the trees begin, circle around, ascend to this point, and then cross over to the point we are at. Now, I know that if I can get from the top to this point, from this point to the upper ridge line, that yes, it looks good. I'm not going to do that today, but this gives you an idea what this loop would look like, and more of an up-front close view of the most difficult stretch, which is between the base of this gully and then winding your way up, zigzagging your way up to the upper ridge line. So there you have it. This is, by the way, a very beautiful area that I'm at right now. And I can imagine there are some nice level spots around here. where you could almost spend the night camping under the stars. Better view of North Sandstone Peak from this perspective. Kind of a unique view, as almost no one comes up to this point where I'm standing right now. You can see now down into the Las Vegas Valley between the Rainbow Mountains and White Rock Mountain. And then looking below, there's White Rock Mountain. And you can see near the base of the mountain, Rocky Gap Road. And then beyond, there's Damsel Peak, about 7,000 feet elevation. I think I'm at least at that point here. No, I'm about 6,500. I just took a look. So anyway, yeah, Damsel Peak. I'm 500 feet below the elevation of Damsel Peak. There's the Madre Ridgeline. And then over to the Wilson Ridgeline. And I want to return to this route at some point and do attempt and explore that next stretch, the difficult stretch to the summit, weaving through the cliffs.